Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cricket Rockstar Plus Show. I'm Tyrelle Audain and we are back. I've been seeing on my social media platforms for the last few days that now that the FIFA Men's World Cup is over and done with, there's a lot of cricket to look back at, from West Indies versus New Zealand ODIs to England versus India ODIs, Los Angeles Knight Riders winning MLC on the fourth attempt in the fourth edition. Don't forget there's the West Indies versus Pakistan Test Series that bowls off on Saturday, and the CPL which bowls off 2 weeks from now, and so many more. Before I get to that, last week you may recall there has been a dramatic last minute change with regarding to the format for next year's ICC Men's Cricket World Cup that's going to be taking place in South Africa, Zimbabwe and Namibia. And that is the topic that I will be talking about in this video. And let me tell you all this right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a two-parter. So you may recall just late last week, the International Cricket Council announced late changes to the format for the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2027 and the ICC Men's T20 World Cup campaign for 2028. And according to the ICC's official announcement, both tournaments will expand their main events after earlier qualification phases had already been outlined, with the governing bodies saying that the changes are designed to improve competitiveness, provide greater opportunities for member nations, and simplify tournament structures. While the intentions may sound positive, the timing of these decisions has without a doubt generated a lot of debate throughout the cricketing world, so as a lot of backlash. But let's talk about that, ladies and gentlemen, and let's begin with the timeline. Previously, the ICC approved long-term event structures several years ago as part of its global events cycle. Those plans included qualification paths for associate and full member nations before reaching the final tournaments. More recently, however, the ICC did revise its formats. The 2027 Cricket World Cup will now feature a large main tournament rather than the originally planned 14-team competition, while the 2028 Men's T20 World Cup will also be expanded once again. The ICC's position is that the adjustments create greater opportunities, accessing global tournaments and offering more teams the chance to compete on cricket's biggest stage. Supporters may argue that the chance to compete, that expanding the finals rewards emerging nations and increasing global participation. Overall, I believe the biggest issue here isn't necessarily the expansion itself. It's how these late changes, which have made the qualification systems providing uncertainty for the players, the fans, the broadcasters, and the cricketing boards. When formats change close to major qualification campaigns, planning becomes much more difficult for the teams. We all know for a fact full member teams, so as associate nations, prepare years in advance based on specific qualification criteria, and sudden alterations naturally raise questions about the fairness and long-term governance. Whether you're a full member nation, an associate nation, or even an affiliate nation, stability matters just as much as opportunity. The one concern I have coming out of all of this, some of the decisions which was made has to remind me of the 2006 ICC Champions Trophy, when in that competition there was preliminary qualification rounds which actually created an uneven tournament experience for some of the nations. Fun fact, coming up to that 2006 event, some of the nations had already played enough competitive cricket before others even entered the competition, which did create questions about the balance and the scheduling. Now, the 2006 Champions Trophy did take place in India, by the way, But coming back to my point, likewise, many fans still remember the old days of the Champions League T20 where qualification rounds often struggled to capture the widespread attention before the main event even begins. Those events did demonstrate that qualification stages can work, but only when they are clearly structured, properly marketed, and supported by fans and broadcasters alike globally. Another area worth discussing is cricket's global growth, and that is something that I actually wanted to talk about as well, but I wanted to save it for post-football World Cup because rather than talking about it the same time as the World Cup was going on in the football, it wouldn't have made any sense. But overall, coming back, the ICC often speaks about expanding the game beyond its traditional powerhouses. But yet again, critics and diehard cricket fans argue that commercial priorities sometimes outweigh long-term development. The sport continues to rely heavily on a handful of major television markets, for example, in South Asia, Australia, the UK, but outside of that, the markets haven't grown at all. Remember when they tried bringing the 50 over World Cup in the Caribbean in 2007, which did see upsets and a whole set of bacchanal? When was the last time the Caribbean hosted an ICC event outside the 50 over World Cup? They have hosted two T20 World Cups, which people have said was successful and unsuccessful at the same time. But outside of that, where did all the revenue go? That's the question. And look at it, the last time Africa hosted an ICC event was the 2009 Champions Trophy, which honestly, Champions Trophy I find was always meaningless. Let me just say that. But beforehand, the last time South Africa hosted an ICC event was 2003 with Zimbabwe and Kenya as hosts, and that generated lots of revenue, if I remember. But the issue here is major television markets. We always know that South Asia has the biggest market. For example, India. Let's look at India, for example. They always have the biggest television market when it comes to cricket, so as the sponsorships, and the list goes on. Where in football, the television markets, they only rely on Europe and South America. Well, now that is expanding because African nations are getting much more exposure, so as the Middle Eastern countries and Asia, so as the North Americas and Central Americas in CONCACAF and the Caribbean. But the issue here is that Caribbean football hasn't grown. Look, for example, look how Jamaica and Trinidad, two of the Caribbean powerhouses in football in the old days, they have gradually declined, while you see other countries like, for example, Curacao, who played its first World Cup this year, Haiti in their second World Cup after 74. They got a lot of exposure because Haiti had to play neutral venue because of the security situation. And Curacao, on the other hand, they played both home and away and did much better than how Jamaica and Trinidad were supposed to play. But coming back to the cricket though, cricket, the biggest market is South Asia. Football, the biggest market is Europe, South America, Africa, and now North America, following the success of the World Cup, despite all the stupid politics that was going on. But nevertheless, by comparison, FIFA, the football federation I'm talking about, FIFA has consistently expanded opportunities for nations from every single continent through larger World Cups, alongside increasing youth competitions, and investment in regional development programs. FIFA certainly does face its own political controversies almost all of the time, but many observers believed that football has always been more successful when it comes to broadcasting globally, and so has the competitive base. Unlike in cricket, over the last couple of decades, it hasn't grown. The market has not even grown one bit. And this brings to be another major topic that the ICC wants to introduce, the proposed World Club T20 Championship. On paper, you have to say, seeing champion franchises from around the world compete against another champion side from another league, it might sound very exciting. However, I have my reservations with it very seriously. Whether such a tournament is particular in today's cricket calendar, because we all know for a damn fact T20 cricket, almost every single competition is overlapping one another. Or should I say T20 cricket franchise league wise, every event is happening basically every month, and that's overpacking the calendar. Players have already been balancing international commitments, meaningless bilateral series in the modern era, so as ICC tournaments, domestic first-class cricket, and an ever-growing amount of franchise leagues. To add the World Club T20 Championship, it is risking creating greater schedule congestion, so as increasing workload concerns and forcing difficult decisions regarding player availability. You all remember seeing that happen in Champions League days where IPL franchises would purely take its usual suspects rather than playing for their very own domestic team, which made the same competition. We've seen that over and over. But another issue that is raised frequently, and it's involving the ownership structures. Several franchise leagues, as I was just talking about a little while ago, includes teams that are owned by business groups that also owns Indian Premier League franchises. And while multi-team ownership is increasingly common across professional sport, it inevitably raises questions about the governance in the game, so as competitive independence and potential conflicts of interest, which has been happening over and over for decades. And these concerns don't automatically mean wrongdoing at all. There's no way that there isn't any wrongdoing. But on the whole, the transparency and strong governance becomes even more important if a World Club T20 Championship is ever introduced. There needs to be clear regulations, which would be very essential to maintaining the public confidence. There was one proposal that I believe deserves a lot of serious consideration, and I agree with, which was coming out of the recent ICC conference that took place in Edinburgh, Scotland, was creating more clearly defining international windows for every format, dedicated periods for Test cricket, so as one-day cricket, which is dying, it's slowing dead, but it's still very competitive nevertheless. And let me also tell you all this. You see, Test cricket and one-day cricket, it is still the two long formats of the game that has a lot of competitiveness. But you see with T20 internationals happening virtually almost every other week, every month, and every single month of the calendar year, personally, Test cricket and one-day cricket needs to have its own windows, as there's already way too much T20 leagues and T20 internationals, which I find doesn't make any sense, and there really isn't no need for T20 internationals and T20 leagues at all, because it's constantly happening all the time, and it really makes no sense. It could also reduce the schedule conflicts and provide greater clarity for players, the boards, the broadcasters, and the supporters. Overall, protecting bilateral cricket at a time where franchise cricket is continuing to flourish even better than ever, it is going to ultimately prove more sustainable than continuing adding new tournaments to an already overpacked cricket calendar. Ultimately, this debate also is about balancing the three priorities, which is growing cricket globally, protecting competitiveness, integrity, and ensuring financial sustainability. We all know that the ICC has every right to review tournament structures as the game evolves, and expanding participation that can certainly benefit emerging nations if implemented effectively. But at the same time, stakeholders, we all know, are justified when it comes to questioning whether significant structure changes, should occur to close to qualification cycles, constructive criticism is part of healthy governance, and every major sporting organization, including the International Cricket Council, is strengthening when decisions are transparent and clearly communicated. Overall, my take on the whole tournament revamp situation is, while some fans may want to welcome this expanded opportunity, there are others that will worried about the consistency, the scheduling, and the long-term direction of international cricket. So my take overall, I am not in support of this revamp for both the 50 over World Cup for 2027 and the T20 World Cup of 2028. I am totally against it, and I'm not a fan of having less teams at 50 over World Cup. Like, seriously, you already have about 16, 20 teams for T20 World Cup. Why continue to decrease the amount of teams for 50 over World Cup cricket? It doesn't make any sense, period. That's going to do it for this part of the Cricket Rockstar Show. I hope you all liked it. Remember, follow me on all of my social media platforms for all things cricket. Till then, it's goodbye for now.